Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today we are joined by a good friend, Jane Frankland. Welcome, Jane.
Hi, Effie. I'm so happy to be here. Like, we talked about doing this for ages, and I'm thrilled we can do it.
We have.
Yeah.
And you know, it's been, I think we first connected back in 2017 when your book INSecurity was just published. We connected through the publisher, and since then we've been following each other. For the audience, Jane is one of the top cybersecurity global influencers. She's an entrepreneur, a long-time entrepreneur, and we'll have the opportunity to talk about her latest venture, which is called TheSource. And of course, she's always been passionate about women in tech and specifically in cybersecurity. I remember looking at your personal website and seeing this sort of mantra there that making women standard in cybersecurity. And you know, let's start, Jane, with that topic. It's also just this past week, International Women's Day. It's the month history of women. You know, what better topic than to start talking about the benefits that women bring to cybersecurity, and share with us your thoughts. I know this is an area that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I think it's an exciting time to be a woman in this industry. So in cyber or in tech. Tech is very different to cyber, but the reason that I'm so kind of passionate about this topic, which I really fell into, it was an accident. Me writing the book was an absolute accident. But I wanted to put across my view and look into this and look into the fact, well, why do we need more women in this industry? You know, do we actually need more women in the industry? What are the differences? What can women bring us? And we know from loads of data that's out there that women in business, particularly in leadership roles, can have a really positive effect in terms of the bottom line. So, and there's more profits, and companies stay in budgets, you know, much longer. There's better innovation and things like that. But when it comes to security, there's a fundamental advantage to women being in this industry, and it comes down to the fact that women see risk very differently to men, and that's a good thing. And women are typically more risk averse, and they are highly attuned to changing patterns of behavior, which is a skill that you need for correctly identifying threat actors and protecting environments. And there are other kind of things that women are good at. So things like, because they're really good, because they have high emotional and social intelligence, and they're highly intuitive, then that really helps them even further. And again, we know from research that the collective intelligence of a group increases when you have more women in that group. And I think that's to the extent of about 73%. So there's lots of data out there, and you'll get different figures and things like that. But those two things are certainly hugely advantageous. And then women can remain calm during times of turbulence. And that's a quality that is required when breaches and major incidents occur. So these things are really helpful to us when it comes to spotting attackers and hackers. And for me, it just makes it really exciting. And the other thing that I was going to add, because I was recently been writing about threat actors and intelligence and threat hunting, and chatting to some of my threat hunting female friends and male friends as well. And it's just really interesting when you look at that, because women, from the research that I've gathered, tend to be very holistic in terms of their approach. So they see the big picture rather than like dig into the detail and be super focused, which typically more men tend to do. And also women tend to ask more questions. And what's interesting to me about that is it down to kind of the situation that we're in terms of culture? Is it because we know we won't be believed as much? So we need to be more thorough with our investigations, and we need to back it up with research and data, and do that legwork to make sure that we are 110% accurate. So I find it quite interesting, and because of that, you know, I'm not saying that women have to work harder or should work harder, because I don't believe that they should or need to, and I know that they are. But because of that, I think we can get a better result.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
As you said, you are sharing the particularities of this sector of cybersecurity, and the idiosyncrasies in this sector. And you know, as you said, this space of cybersecurity obviously is becoming more complex. It's changing in nature. So we have new types of frauds. I mean, I'm not personally an expert, so I tend to think of, you know, 3 or 4 types of attacks, but then I realize that we should also look at the criminals, the people that are, you know, the enemies, so to speak. Tell us about how we should think of them. What type of cyber criminals are out there? I mean, I can think of, you know, sort of not the professional, or the ones that are professional, but they're really looking to do these attacks that are individual attacks. Give us an understanding of how you, as a specialist, think of the types of criminals.
Yeah, well, like you said, they can range. So it can be an individual working alone, or it can be like groups. And if you've got, I mean, cyber criminals, they follow the money trail. So it's just like they're going to go after low-hanging fruit. And there's a lot of it, you know, there are a lot of rich pickings to be gained, and they can do it so many different ways. But typically what you'll see is like big groups. So these are professional groups out there that are very businesslike in their approach. They are really, really well run, and these are performance companies. Effectively, they have support contracts and things like that. So they're very, very efficient. They're very well run, and they're very profitable. They make a lot of money because it's big business for them. So those are the kind of like 2 types of attackers that we see. We also have state-sponsored attackers, you know, who are out there, and they are being directed by governments. So they'll be stealing information and trying to get ahead of the game.
So it's digital spying, sort of.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, espionage. And then we will have sometimes the kind of script kiddies, you know, the ones that just want to cause mischief, or maybe they just want to see if they can get in to, say, a financial organization. They can breach, you know, make that breach just for the hell of it. And typically we see that type of persona, that type of person, being a young male. And that's often how, you know, many of the penetration testers, the ethical hackers, come into the industry. You know, they've come in that way because they have tinkered and messed about and see things as a bit of a challenge. But that really is the difference between someone who is a white hat, you know, hacker, or a black hat hacker. So you've got one doing out there to protect and do good and find the vulnerabilities in an organization, and the other one which is just going to take and use that to profit from individually or as a group, and effectively be paid a salary or percentage. And of course, the other thing which isn't kind of related to hackers and cyber criminals is the mistakes that are made out there, because a lot of breaches occur because you know, sometimes
human error.
Yeah, exactly, because of an error. So human error. And I think it's something like, I think it's something like 95%, or it's high, it's in the 90s in terms of that human error side. So it's not intentional. And of course, that problem has just escalated what with the pandemic and this move to either total remote working or hybrid. So yeah, it's difficult, it's challenging.
Jane, in your book, you have a chapter that has the title "Qualifications Don't Make a Hacker."
Yeah.
So tell us, what is the typical qualifications of a hacker, or what point did you want to what message did you want to get across with this?
Yeah, well, it's the so in order to hack, whether that's like for good or for bad, so ethical hacking or not ethical hacking, you actually don't need qualifications. What matters is that you can do it. And like I was saying a few minutes ago, a lot of the white hat hackers, have been tinkering and messing around to see if they can actually get into something, break something. Where are the vulnerabilities? And certainly I've been in the industry for over 24 years, and I owned a global penetration testing company, and we had some of the best ethical hackers in the world working with us. And most of those didn't have any qualifications. They just learn on the job. And that was a very different time. And there are qualifications that are out there in terms of hacking, like white hat hacking, like ethical hacking. And they are becoming more prominent. But one of the points that I really wanted to make was really kind of related to that, but also specifically in terms of women, because often women think that they need to get these qualifications and certifications in order to be taken seriously. It's just like, yeah, believe me, I am technical enough. I can actually do this job. And by the way, I've got qualification and things like that. So it really was around both of those things. And my kind of like call was, women, you don't have to have those. So know the place of a certification and a qualification, because there is a place for it. And also, you don't have to. What matters is that you can actually do this job as opposed to necessarily be certified. Because when it comes to hackers out there, they don't have all of that. They just can do the job, and they too are using tools. And I appreciate that the job of a hacker, an adversary, is not the same as someone who is protecting an environment, because hackers only need to find one way in, and they are not bound by regulations. So it's much more difficult for us as protectors of organizations and systems and governments and environments and things like that.
You bring a great point of this sort of gap between the hackers and what you call them, the white or ethical hackers there. And this is an important point, because there's a lot of digital innovation out there, with COVID and contactless payments, for example, embedded finance and all crypto. All this new stuff is just, I say, a playground, a new playground for potential hackers to explore. And on the other hand, how can the industry keep up with the new red flags and the new fraud alerts that they just can't keep up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a challenge. I think, whether it's industry, like big organizations, or whether it's small organizations, I mean, literally the estate is so massive now. The assets that we need to protect, whether as a small business owner or as a large one in charge of the whole thing, is immense. It's absolutely immense. And it's so difficult. And this is, one of the reasons why, we need the diversity, in terms of gender, definitely, and in terms of experience and other kind of categories and things like that, because we need people to be able to, one, help us to innovate better, to help. One of my bugbears at the moment is design. It's that user experience, and it's just like, oh my God, working in security and dealing with a lot of friction, because that's the state of where we are now. You know, the thinking is flawed, and there is a lot of friction for us to operate and do business. And it's particularly horrible to witness and have to go through as someone working in cybersecurity. And it's just like, I know I need to have two-factor authentication on, or multi-factor authentication, but it's really bugging me because it's not working. So we need lots of different types of people who can see these things and who maybe don't work in the same way, but in a very complementary way, you know, to others in the industry. So we do need, coming back to this qualifications don't make a hacker, you know, we do need people who are logical, but who are creative, and who are really good at communicating, so that we can explain some of the intricacies, some of the problems, some of the challenges, and get buy-in from all of the different stakeholders, whether they are technical or whether they are more business level. So yeah, I mean, that's why I do, and I'm a big advocate for science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. And there's a big push for, which is referred to as STEAM, but there's typically a big push for STEM. So come into the industry and looking for people with STEM backgrounds. And it's just that we need to open it up. We really do need, we're disadvantaged and blindsided without being more open. So it's just like, there is a place for you. If you can think well, then we need you to come into our industry. So we need to, and it's ironic, but life always laughs at you, doesn't it? I mean, there's that saying, like, man plans and God laughs, you know, so we need to be more open rather than locked down and restricted. And yeah, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Very interesting observation that in this cybersecurity subsector of tech, it's much clearer that we need this combination of science, engineering, mathematics, but also arts and behavioral science and all those other disciplines to be combined together. Jane, before talking to you, I was reviewing one of your interviews at CyberSecurity 2018, and you were making a point about the percentage of attacks that are not sophisticated or are sophisticated. But it struck me that at the time, at least, that figure of unsophisticated attacks was quite high. Is that still the case?
Yes, it is. And I don't have a figure for you in terms of the unsophisticated attacks, but I do have some interesting figures that I can share with you. So, and it also relates to that, because I think at the time, I think when I was giving that media interview, when I was at CyberSecurity a few years back, I actually disclosed that there was 1% that was attributed to 1% of GDP, that was global GDP rather, that was attributed to yearly related cybersecurity damages. Well, looking at kind of up-to-date information, that's just like skyrocketed. So now we're looking at about 7%. I mean, and to me, it's just like, really, you know, it's such an interesting question, Effie, because I remember that so vividly, like what is the situation right now? And then, you know, looking at, well, what is it like now? You know, how it was then. It's just like, seriously, it's that level. So it's skyrocketed. And, you know, in terms of risk management and information security spending, I think Gartner was saying that it's increased about 17 billion from last year. So it now rests at about 172 billion US dollars. And like I said, it's increasing. It's increased about 17 billion from the year before and about 18 billion from the year before that. So that's really quite astounding. And the average data breach, the average cost of a data breach is currently sitting, according to IBM, at about 4.25 US million dollars. You know, so it's huge. We know that ransomware attacks are increasing. Again, they're quite easy to do, they're profitable, lots of low-hanging fruit out there. So why wouldn't a cyber criminal or any criminal go and exploit that? There are just so many ways, and technology is advancing so fast. And even, you know, even when something looks real, it might not be, or something doesn't look real, it might be. So we're having to check and be thorough the whole time. And you know, I've got some funny stories that I can tell, you know, about that, but it's just so complicated, and it's so costly. And yeah, it's such good business, and this isn't going to go away, and we're never going to get rid of it. That's the thing. Just as the night follows the day, we're never going to get rid of it. So it's pretty much a future-proofed industry as any can be, and it's highly lucrative. We do need to do a better job of risk management and have better technologies to help.
And it doesn't seem that the anti-money laundering policies and regulations are helping on this, because I know, you know, from the financial industry that those numbers keep rising. The cost of complying with anti-money laundering regulations, the amount of dollars that is caught is really small, and the percentage that evades is huge. So it doesn't seem that it is helping the cybersecurity industry, because obviously, as you're saying, if this is a lucrative business, how come we can't catch, you know, a big percentage of those revenues or profits rather?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough, and this is one of the problems, and like one of the learnings or lessons that people need to get. So for large companies, large organizations and enterprises, it's just like you need to improve upon your cyber literacy. You need to understand this much better than you do now. So boards and non-executive directors and other C-levels, it's just like we need to do something about that. They have to have that appetite, and we need to help them, and we can do all of that. And then, you know, when you're looking at smaller organizations, again, the same thing, but they also need help in terms of, well, who do they go to? You know, what is affordable for them? So we're all working with lots of different budgets, but what I see, say, in terms of the small business owner, which is the majority of our economies, they really are kind of left to struggle. Even if they know about it and get why it's important, actually trying to find a provider who can provide a service that is competent is really, really difficult. It's so difficult. So we've got to do a better job, I think, from a government perspective, of actually enabling that and equipping technology providers and outsourcing companies to actually service businesses, small to medium businesses, much more effectively. And we need better solutions out there to enable that to happen. And then with larger organizations, there are other things that we need to do, and a lot of those we are doing. And things like, you know, cloud technologies can help, providing that they're implemented properly. So yeah, very different audiences and very, very different challenges.
Right. So shall we go back to women?
Yeah.
Yes, let's go back to women and cybersecurity. So let's talk about your latest initiative, TheSource, and what the mission is there, and put it in context.
Yeah.
With cybersecurity and women. First of all, even the name of the initiative tells us a lot. So please, I'd like to hear from you the story.
Yeah, well, so there is a story there. The reason it's called TheSource is because it is, well, TheSource is a platform for women in cybersecurity. So no matter what level you're at, whether you're entry level or anywhere up to leader level, including entrepreneurs, it's for you. If you're interested in it, you can come and be part of it. my mission, my big mission out is to actually make women standard in cybersecurity and not exception for some of the reasons that we've gone through today. So we need to do things differently. And so that's who it is for. And what happens in the source, in the platform, it's very collaborative, it's very co-creational, because you get to create and you get to collaborate, you get to connect with other women. There are 3 streams to it. So you have live masterclasses that are going on, so you can learn from women and some men in the industry about how to do things better or in a different way. So and you can also learn from other trusted sources, so people in my network who can equip you with different tools that you might not know about. And those aren't necessarily tools that are technology tools or anything like that. They could be tools and ways of being that are within yourself. So you're accessing you because you are the source as well. And so the source has a lot of meaning in terms of that. Life comes through us as women, whether or not we choose to have children or not. That is there for us. We are the source. We are a source. We are power. We don't have to step into our power. We might need help in accessing it and using it, but we are power. So we are a source. And the other reason why I called it the source is because when I went to South Africa to speak at an event, keynote at an event for Women's Day, which is the equivalent of International Women's Day. They have a saying out there, which is strike a rock, strike a woman, strike a rock. I'll get it right. And I thought that was really interesting. And I looked at all the history behind it and everything like that. But I couldn't help but think, well, when you strike a rock, you get hurt, you hurt your hands. So it's just like, how can we, I'm thinking about wars and battles and things like that. How can we stop that? How can we get to what we want without being hurt, without anybody being hurt, without there being retribution, without there being fear as well, because that stops, it creates terrible things. So for me, it was coming back to this, like, be like water. And Bruce Lee, I think, I didn't know, but all I could think was, like, water, be like water. And someone said, well, Bruce Lee is very famous for that. And when I looked into it and with all of the spiritual meanings behind the source and things like that, I thought it has to be like that. And so with water can get to wherever it wants, it can find a way as a trickle. We've got the ripple effect, we've got a tsunami of change, we've got a current, all of these things. So for me, it had to be the source, because the source is the first place that people go. And I want that to be the case with this platform. And because we collaborate with other women's groups and other training groups and organizations who believe in our mission, then it's the first place that you go to the source. It is your wellspring. If you want to find a resource, you go to the source. If you want to find another way of being, or get another tool, or join a community, or you go to the source. So it connects. It connects all things, just like water. It's so that's why I called it the source. I had many different names for it, but that's kind of a little bit more about it. And it's not like the source is a digital platform. It is online. There will be offline elements to it when we kind of come more out of this pandemic. But it's global, and it's not like work. So this is not like a corporate thing. It's not like all the normal kind of groups or things that you might find out there, which are like, this requires me to work. This is a place of pride. This is a place to be replenished, to fill your cup and to find more fulfillment and joy, and to be connected and held and supported, not just in your profession, not just in the profession of cybersecurity, but in your life. It is this sisterhood, for want of a better word. So yeah, that's what the source is.
Very, very inspiring. And I'm hearing under the lines and connecting to what you said earlier, that through this you are acknowledging strongly the importance of intuition.
Yes.
Connecting to our source and trusting that intuition or wisdom
Yes.
that comes, and it's wisdom is not always about age and you know, project experience and so on. It's about allowing that connection, and of course about being in a network that from which you can really within which you can really flourish by taking in from that network and having the network effects.
And absolutely, completely. You're so right, Effie. And it is completely that place where we can learn new ways of being. Because say, like, take, for example, I'm surrounded by a lot of women. I help with this mission. I hear lots of things, and quite often I hear bad advice, and often this advice can be coming from women. So they can be saying, yeah, you do need to work twice as hard or 10 times as hard. And it's like, no, you don't actually. That's like flawed thinking. You don't. And if you continue to do that, you will be burnt out. And we already have, I think, 1 in 10 cybersecurity professionals at the moment are leaving the industry. We have a brain drain anyway in lots of other different industries, but we're all being affected. So if you continue to work twice as hard or 10 times as hard, which invariably women do, just to prove that they really can do it, that's a fast way to, one, illness, and also to exit out of this industry, because a lot of women tell me that they can't do this anymore. It's hard. They can't fight the fight any longer, and they are burning out, and they're being asked to do so many different things, to take on board different responsibilities, etc., because that's typically what can happen. And also typically we cannot say no enough. You know, we have to learn to say no so much more. We have to teach our daughters, especially, or nieces, that the women and young women in our family, and us practice it as women, to say no more often. You know, no. And certainly the further you and I will laugh about this, because we've had like conversations about, I need to do this as a business owner and so on. But certainly the further along you go, the more no's you have to say, because certainly if you're achieving things, you have to be really focused and know exactly what you're exchanging your time and energy for, or money, financial investment for. So we do have to get more comfortable about saying no and ways to do that. So yeah, so it is about learning different ways and those flawed ways, so that we actually are healthier, and we can create this this force, you know, for us to be sustainable and effective. So if we're burnt out, we're not thinking well, you know, and we need to think well, because we're trying to combat adversaries, and some of those adversaries we'll find if it's in banking and things like that, but we're all affected, you know. So what is that doing? You know, what is that doing to the change?
And in a digital world, these adversaries are working 24/7, you know, digital and so on. So, you know, this can lead us to think that, you know, we shouldn't sleep because the enemies are out there. And this is a vicious cycle that leads really to
It is. And also with leaders as well, it's just like, no, you get what you tolerate, or you get what you're willing to tolerate, you know. So we need a different type of leader. And especially I think during the pandemic, so much was put upon us without that kind of acceptance that, well, yeah, maybe our revenues are going to be lower, and we just have to like accept that, because we're going through one of the most difficult times in our lives. You know, this is a crisis. We haven't done this before, and we're now being asked to do this, that, and the other at speed. So we can't expect the same thing that we did. That's wrong. That's unfair. So we need to have better ways of being with everyone, so that we can actually do better and like be more sustainable. So yeah, we need to be kinder and more compassionate and reasonable and supportive, and not too supportive. And we need to create these environments of high challenge and high support. And they need to be, the challenge and the support needs to be in equal doses, because if it is not, then we get, so say if we offer too much support in terms of leadership to our teams, then they can become too reliant on us. So we need them to be self-directing, and we need them to feel safe, and we need to challenge them, because if they're they're too safe and they're not stretched, then they can get complacent and they can get a bit bored, and then they can become reliant on us. So we need those two in equal doses. Which is
fantastic, Jane. This coming from cybersecurity, I think is a great sort of line of thought, or a guide, if you want. The high challenging environment and highly supportive to make this work, but we can take it and apply it to everywhere. Jane, before closing, I want to ask you if you can share with us at least one, maybe two names of important women in history in cybersecurity, so we can acknowledge these women, because at least to me, there isn't a woman that comes to mind, and maybe if you highlight some, it would be a fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Rinki Sethi, if I can say it correctly. She's a CISO at Twitter. She's amazing. She is just like wonderful, a brilliant leader, compassionate. Like all of the people that I'm going to mention are amazing. So go check them out. Rinki is incredible. Lauren Goodwin, she's another incredible force. So she's actually a chief technology officer. But she's got a background in security. She's just absolutely wonderful. I want to mention Dr. Jessica Barker. She's a really good friend. She came in from sociology side, so she didn't have a tech background. Who else? Farida Shahid. She's a young woman. She is incredible woman, and they all are. Yeah, so those are fantastic. And it's just like there are so many that I know, and I'll kind of kick myself after. It's just like, who else should I have mentioned? But those are some women who you might not know about. So I would encourage your viewers and your listeners to go and check out those women.
Women in cybersecurity, and what a wonderful discussion, Jane. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights with us today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Effie.